I want to talk about the people, or ordinary people, as I sometimes refer to them. I always get told off for doing so, because I think that the way in which they have been spoken about over the past 3.5 years is one of the things that has shocked even me. And I'm someone who's been talking about the snobbery of the elites for a very long period of time. On this podcast, we've had numerous leavers, mostly left-wing leavers. In fact, Kate Hoey, Gisela Stewart, Paul Embry, Maurice Glassman, also more right-leaning leavers like Matt Ridley and others. And all of them have expressed this horror, in fact, and none of them had any pretensions, particularly in the political class, as this kind of wonderful institution. But all of them have been horrified to varying degrees at what has happened over the past 3.5 years. So I do think a reckoning with what has happened is in order. And I think one of the things that I found really despicable since June 2016 was the speed and the intensity with which voters' common sense was called into question, their values were called into question, and then that gave way to this demonization of them as racist and xenophobic, and it very quickly snowballed into one of the most anti-democratic drives I can remember in my lifetime. And I think that's one of the things that the Brexit Party experienced in the way you've just described. But one of the things that the Brexit Party experienced was this notion that you guys were, almost because you had won the European Parliament elections and almost because you did represent that kind of intensive, largely working class, quite northern desire, particularly you as the MEP for North West England, because you represented all of that, that made you instantly suspect. So I wanted to ask you, looking back over the past 3.5 years, have you been shocked by what has been said? And also, do you think we can move on from that? Or do you think we need to have a proper discussion, a proper analysis of the breakdown in political decorum before we can move on to some more kind of normal form of politics?
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I've just actually had a weekend in which I, typically on social media, have had a run-in with some of the more extreme elements of the Remainer hardcore that are left, and their ways of talking about people and the accusations of racism and knuckle dragging and all the rest of it have been so vile. And I really try and resist replying or getting wound up by it, but I get wound up by it because I cannot stand it. I'm so outraged by I can't bear it when they do it. I can't bear that they think that people are stupid and vile and xenophobic and anti, somebody said, Brexit is just anti-foreigners and then you go, no, it isn't. And it's like the whole thing. And then it kind of starts and it unravels. And some of these prejudices have really taken me aback. I mean, it has taken me aback. And it's interesting because at the same time that that's been going on, there's been this, in the last few days, a bit of a discussion about somebody that it looks like the Tories have taken on, who has written some pretty, foul things in terms of a eugenicist account of people. It's a bit murky as to who said what when, by the way. But so I'm not particularly entering into that. But what I think is extraordinary is people can well be outraged at something that somebody said about eugenics and people's intelligence and race, and I myself am pretty appalled. But the people who are condemning them are the very people who at the same time have got no embarrassment whatsoever about talking about stupid, easily duped Leave voters who were anti-foreign, in other words, and also with the knuckle dragging, some of these more animalistic, anti-humanist, basically the dehumanizing of one's opposition has been, to levels that I never thought feasible, lift up the stone, vermin, all of these things, gammon itself, whilst a kind of slightly semi-jokey thing, in the end. Yeah. Pigs. It's it's pigs. Yeah. It's also, it's not human, right? It's a lump of meat. And it also describes people's skin colour, and it's making a mockery of their looks. All of these things, just in a period when you can be absolutely cast out of polite society for quoting Shakespeare, talking about man and apes, as happened recently to a well-known newsreader. But yet those same people, the sensitivity doesn't exist. I think one of the things, though, that's tricky for me is that I have found that I get more wound up by it than anything else. I mean, I never thought I'd get like this, but it's not even like a romantic attachment to the working class or anything like that. I'm shocked at realizing the levels of contempt, the dripping contempt there is for millions of people. I find it very difficult. I think one of the things that has occurred to me, which if you think about it would be true, is, I think we probably, all of us who were involved in left-wing politics, would probably know that most of the people in the establishment probably had imagined secretly, they're sitting in their clubs, they probably did not seriously think that the cleaner and the dustbin man, woman, or whoever was actually probably their equal, right? And they probably had a little bit of a condescending attitude to people who'd left school without qualifications and were northern and spoke in funny accents and all of these things, right? But they confined those thoughts to amongst themselves. You would never, ever say it out loud, because you understood that in order for the system to work, you had to at least go along with rhetorically the idea that everyone was equal at the ballot box, that we didn't look down our noses. What has been remarkable about the Leave voters, and I've often said this, is I've said on things where I've listened to people and I've said, we can hear you, They discuss people. I was like, that we can hear this conversation. I mean, I don't know what's happened to you. A number of these QCs, when they have these conversations, you think you're saying we know what you're talking about to us or ordinary people, and you're saying it out loud. That might have been a dirty little secret of the British establishment, but that dirty little secret is well and truly out in the open. And that has also let rip or allowed, as it were. And, one has to be careful, because I have no boundaries on free speech. So I do know that, this is what people say about all sorts of things, but once those things get said, they can't get unsaid. Yeah. And then it allows people to express in a respectable fashion some pretty vile things out loud. And that's why that permission has been granted now. So it's very hard to put that genie back in the bottle. Just like the positive side of Brexit is that, the democratic genie, the agency genie is out. Yeah. Also, some of these kind of disdainful, these vile views are out, and they're there. And we now realise that a substantial minority of people in this country see their fellow citizens as lesser human beings than animals, and animalistic, and would happily kind of disregard them in a democratic way, but sometimes in a more, punitive way, we just deprive them of their liberty almost. So how do we get over that? Because it is tricky, because I also firmly believe that most people aren't like that. The majority of people who voted Remain actually accepted the votes, first of all, in 2016. A bit like in any kind of relationship breakup. I know these are naff analogies, but, obviously they then were given false hope by the establishment who said, you're heartbroken that we're leaving the EU. There's a chance we aren't. Don't worry, trust us. So they kind of carried on. So they kind of couldn't get over it, because they were suddenly given this possibility that the marriage might work, sort of thing. So that goes on. But I still think that over a period of time, I met somebody, a great guy last week in Stockport, who came to a young guy, who voted Remain, and he is now an ardent Brexiteer, because he could not get over the anti-democratic attitudes as revealed, because some of his family had voted Leave. He was shocked, and he was kind of very much in the kind of middle class, professional kind of young person who just has now had it all revealed to him. So I want to also say that it's not such a large gap to get over, because I don't think it includes the majority of people. But because we experience so much of this thing through the extremes, there is a silent majority of people who might be unhappy that we're leaving the European Union and think it was the wrong decision, but they're decent people. They don't go around thinking people are ape-like knuckle draggers who are stupid. They just think we've made a mistake, which is a perfectly legitimate political position to hold, in my view. So I want to get over it. Yeah. And when we say have a reckoning, it's hard to know what you do. Yeah. And I try not to go over it. But as I say, once a kind of piling happens on social media, as it has done to me this weekend, It's like during the European elections, people will laugh, but I completely plagiarised the slogan, you know, they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
And to the point where people started telling me that Michelle Obama was copying my slogan. But anyway, it was all a bit embarrassing. But anyway, I'd say at every rally, and I, you know, as a way of kind of encouraging us to people not to get bitter and just name call. But I'd be saying on stalls, you know, on the streets, you know, they go low, we go high. And then somebody come back past us and say, you racist scumbags, and I'd go, you get back. So all these people I'd just given an election to, because I think you want to be calm, you want to say keep the lid on it, but some of the insults are so outrageous, not at me or you or those of us in the public sphere who, God, you know, we're tough enough, but just the way that whole sections of people have had their reputations traduced and destroyed is pretty grim.